most of us here are community in terms of our license that we hold, our broadcast license, and then we have commercial and or private and public. Okay, so in the case of ownership and control with community, you've got different, structures. I didn't ask that, but I would have wanted to see whether there's a few trusts here, or is it just like NPCs and
Trust.
Okay, so you can be a trust, a NPC, non-profit company, or NPO. ICASA then issued the license against the non-profit entity. The board has got the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they put mechanisms and systems in place to ensure compliance to, they call it promise to performance, which is the license conditions you issued by ICASA. So in the case of Swaziland, I've worked with Ambrose in Swaziland with the Eswatini Community Radio Network.
What was
Zwania. Yeah. So what you guys have, there's something similar in terms of your regulator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think exciting is the process that you had a few years ago where you started to amend some of those regulations, and you had opportunity to make input. So when it comes to our structure, our setup or structure within countries, we sit as a third tier as community broadcasters, but in terms of ownership and control, it doesn't really negates the importance of you as a structure, because you look at community needs, number one. So you identify your purpose in your mission vision statement, and in the case of Christian media, we obviously link that to our purpose in our calling. So I think it's a perfect place to start when you look at your radio station. You look at your vision, your mission, and then you look at what is the social impact that you assert as a organization, as a radio station. So how do you then come to understanding your role as a broadcaster to assert social impact on your community, your local community? So I think those are some of the issues that we've tried to summarize. This is a thick document. I can make it available if you like reading to you. But I'm going to start just browsing through some of the text so that we have a context in terms of, yes.
Thanks, Prince. Just one thing on your community.
Yes.
By community, do we talk of the geographical location?
Yes.
Because us is not necessarily geographical. We are now nationwide. Still community.
Yes, you're still community. You are community of interest. You've got your community is a community of interest. So if it's Christian, yes. If it's jazz, yes. If it's within different regulatory systems, they've allowed for definition of what community might be, and in general, it then sits with either a community of interest or a geographic community. Okay, so so we're gonna just look from a South African context, but I will be able to take questions from you if you are not clear. But in general, when it comes to compliance, it doesn't really matter where you are. So those mechanisms would be different types of licenses, broadcasting on the one side, the 3 tiers for radio, and telecoms, the others, services. So I'm going to brush through those, and then if you look at the South African context, the statutory context, the sector is defined within the Broadcast Act. Way back in 1999, there's been some amendments to that. Then the Electronic Communications Act, and you know that in the past we had the postal services on the one side, and broadcasting, IBA, the Independent Broadcast Authority, IBA Act. And so with the EC, it was brought together. The Electronic Communications Act was formed because it's now a converged environment in terms of the technology that drives it. So they were looking at how to create a framework, a policy framework for what's happening within the technical space, if I have to put it in simple terms. So the technical space is digitization. So you would find then that there's this body called the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, that has broken up the world in different regions. We fall under region 1, and then they dictate to us. They will tell us, you will, as region 1, you will migrate from analog for TV to digital within so many years. This is the cutoff, and we've missed that cutoff as South Africa. I don't know about Swaziland, but we've missed that cutoff, and the reason for that is space. What do you call it? Broadband, frequency bands. I want to put it untechnical so that everybody understands frequency band. So the frequency band that the telcos or the telecoms companies want is the one that broadcasting sits in, and so International Telecommunications Union decided globally that, obviously lobbied by these very big deep-pocketed telcos, that you guys need to move. And so we are moving. We are moving out of that space. TV has been already shut down in most countries. And so we are with radio. In region 1, radio will have dual propagation. So there's no cutoff for analog radio in region 1, or in South Africa at least, while there will still be a switch on to digital. So you will find that the commercial stations is already buying up space within, they call it a multiplex, which is the space within a digital broadcast environment where stations now can buy bandwidth, where they will transmit digital signals to be received by digital receivers. Technical. So just in terms of your understanding of why we then had the ECA, it was to facilitate this whole process. Okay, so the Electronic Communications Act allow for community broadcasters to apply for ECA license. And what we haven't done really is to look at the other side, because you have broadcast services, but you also have, what do you call this, data services, which this license can actually facilitate. We haven't really looked at that in terms of a possible income opportunity, but there are telcos that are interested to partner with. In fact, Centec is busy setting up something like that, to partner with community radio stations to be able to make available broadband, Wi-Fi, and all of those within geographic areas. So Telkom just pitched that a year or so ago. I don't know how far they are with that. So from a legal framework or a statutory framework point of view, we also have in South Africa the Media Development Diversity Agency, which you all know, and then USASA. USASA we don't really talk a lot about, but the USASA is the Universal Service Access Agency South Africa, a state-owned entity, and they is established through the Communications Act. So their role is really to give universal access through these digital channels. They must make sure that rural South Africa get access and is connected. Okay, so then there's the Department of Communications. The Department of Communications, they've changed their role so many times, but they really also to facilitate this universal access agenda that the USASA has got as an agency. The political seat for that is within DOC, the Department of Communications.
Change the name now too.
Yes, they've changed the name as well. What's the new name?
DC, Department of Communications and Telecom and Postal Services, DTPS.
DTPS.
Something like that.
Yeah. So DTPS, and then there's the role of the of ICASA, which you guys know as a regulator. In your case, it will be the Eswatini Communications Commission. Role of MDDA, we've spoken about that, and then the Universal Universal Service Access Agency. I'm gonna read this because I think it's not well known, but it's a public entity as defined by Section 3, Schedule 3A. And the existence and functions, duties, mandate of the agency are governed by Section 80 and 91 of the ECA Act. Okay, so it's actually located as a vehicle within the Act to facilitate the rollout of adequate information and communication technology infrastructure, ICTs, facilitate ICT service underserviced areas. You would know that, or if you know, then there's a what do you call this? Entrepreneurial initiatives that USASA used to drive, where they allowed, they call it secondary areas. You have the primary areas and the secondary areas for licensing. So in the secondary areas, they allowed licenses for these small entrepreneurial entities to provide ICT services. So yeah, I'm gonna jump that. And then this is where I actually want us to start looking at why do we have these licenses. So your purpose of having a community radio license mostly is located within your vision mission. You articulate yourselves around that within your vision mission statements of your radio stations, okay? But from a policy point of view, we've spoken about that now. But then there's this side where it has got to do with public. It's a sorry for the blank space here now. It's public interest. That's the word I'm looking for. So it's a public interest context. So your station is located within a community, but your purpose would be public interest related. So there are local development challenges, and your radio station then answers some of them through broadcasting. So you would find quality content partners, or you will do it yourself. I don't know how you manage to do it yourself, because it's much easier to find the partners to be able to, to build up your capacity, to be able to deliver on a daily basis content, local quality content that can address some of these local development challenges. So this context here looks at that. There are different distinctive approaches. The one is the social welfare one, where we refer broadly to programs, benefits, and services offered by religious, voluntary, non-governmental, governmental and organizations and individuals, groups, and communities. You see there that I've quoted, how do I pronounce that, Mr. Kwesi? Klugman. Oh yeah. Klugman. Oh, you see there. Klugman. Okay. So activities and actions are directed at people in distress, vulnerable groups, and individuals in those and those citizens exposed to social ills, neglect, as well as the crisis burdens beyond individual family or care support. Now, we look at government and then we expect government to provide that social welfare service. And they do it through different programs, different departments, Department Social Services, Department Health, all of those departments. But there's a link between us and them. And this is where the techie starts meeting the tar. That's where, when you look at your mission statement talks about the how. So if you look at CCFM, what's your vision? I don't want to put you on the spot, but anyone can share maybe the vision of the station or the slogan?
Mission statement.
Mission, yeah.
In a nutshell, it's to proclaim the gospel
Okay.
using high quality audio technology to present informative, instructive, peace promoting, multilingual programming.
Okay. So when you listen to that mission statement, it's how. It's the how. How do we reach? You can hear in all of what he's saying, he's explaining the how. Okay. So when you look at that, it then brings us closer in terms of how do we then take responsibility for some of these social evils within local communities. So I've heard the last speaker just after lunch, what's his name? Charles or what? The guy,
Stone Street.
the Skype, John?
Stone Street.
Stone Street.
Yes.
What's his name?
John.
John. Okay. So John spoke about the purpose that we have and how in this time frame it becomes even more of a reality of how we interpret that reality through our content. So the little bit of that what I could pick up before I jumped out of that session. So I think when you look at these distinctive approaches, we might see them as government jargon, but it's actually just giving us a frame how we can position ourselves in terms of a development context. So it's so critical for us to see that as a local radio, as a community radio, to be able to locate ourselves as a player within this space, and then you use these models to understand better how to position yourself. So I know we're talking compliance, but if you say that as a radio license you want to develop local communities with this license, then the question is how. Okay, so so social welfare would be one spectacle that you look through. Social development, okay, that is the approach that links social and economic development based on principles such as self-help, self-determination, active participation in service rendering. So here now we are getting more engaged. This is more, about, what can we do together? Not just how can I position myself to provide you with, but how do we take our radio station? How does a breakfast program start engaging street kids and people on the streets? How do I position the content to be able to be real in a world that doesn't know love? So the key is love. That's my personal opinion. So the key is love. You can become that love in many other ways other than just talking about it. That's very inspiring. So with social development, we can now see that there's now an engagement. So we get these groups together, we reach out into these communities, and we start talking, dialoguing, trying to find partners that's already involved within these local communities that's working to alleviate the kind of challenges that these communities are stressing under. So I'm gonna jump because my time, what's the time now? Oh goodness, yeah. So then community development, to look at that as an approach, okay? And then sustainable development as an approach. So when we look at community development as an approach, obviously it's looking at partnerships and trying to find ways of us getting income opportunity through our partnership and facilitate, on the other hand, the outcomes or deliverables. Okay, so sustainable development, it's also another spectacle that I can look through. The reason why I'm jumping them is because I'm not trying to create, I'm trying to tell you that when you look at your compliance side, specifically your promise to performance, in that you are being urged to have community meetings, and they say you must prove the mechanisms that you employ to engage the community, to to influence your program planning. That's how ICASA puts it. So if you are real about this, it's not just about what we show ICASA, but it's really about changing the statistics and the data within our communities. We want to see poverty being alleviated. We want to see less street kids. We want to see less abuse within families. We want to see less of those things. And how do we do that? As a radio station, I can give you a quick example. What I did when I was running KC as a station manager, I went to the police chief and I said, police chief, give me your stats of what the problems are in my footprint. So the police chief told me, Franklin, yeah, this is my problems. So I said, okay, police chief, what of these can we address in the coming festive season? So this was about June that year. So then he said to me, okay, Franklin, I think we can address these because these are our red areas. They call it red zones. So we then started with a campaign on air, trying to address those issues. And it's a campaign where you go full house. You know, you don't just do talk shows. You do what do you call these short audio that PSAs. You do jingles. You really go into addressing some of those issues. So some of those issues were break-ins and robberies and just issues around abuse, human abuse, and all of those. So we started with those, a campaign around it. And we started that around October that year, and we ran with it until February the next year. Different topics that we addressed over that period. And then I said to him, I'm going to give you free airtime, but I want you to give me a report to show me the year-on-year performance against these that you've given me. So the following year, he gave me the report, and lo and behold, it came down. That for me was great, because as a community radio, I now have proof of social impact. I couldn't before, because I don't have the tools that they have when they do their assessments and surveys, but I can if I partner with them in a way to be able to achieve some of these. So what I'm saying to you is that yes, these are maybe jargon, but when you look at how to interpret them in your day-to-day operations and you start influencing your thinking of your people that's running programs, it then becomes tools that you can use towards achieving social impact. And that's where we want to be. We want to improve lives, but we want to change, what do you call it? Ons wil nie hê ons mense moet aanhou sukkel nie, man. Ons wil vir hulle wys daar's hoop. That's the word. We want to bring back hope, you know? That's what we want to do. Simple example again. We changed our on-air, what do you call this, branding? On-air branding. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, you drive through the community and the kids playing on the fields there, it's play pakas and whatever they play, they sing those jingles. So it means that you are starting to influence the subconscious through the messaging. And that's important because we don't take it for granted, we shouldn't. But because we don't make it a strategic issue, it just flows. But actually you can make it strategic, because if the kid sings the tune that started 2 weeks ago, how on earth does he know that, or she? So it means that there is definitely an opportunity for me as a radio station to understand the importance of messaging and how I can influence behavior through that.
Is there mechanisms that exist to quantify those things? Because I'll tell you why where my question's coming from.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that we had was to apply for PBO status.
PBO.
Right. So you've got to be able to substantiate.
Yeah.
So with the example that you use now, one could argue maybe the people who was responsible for lifting the crime last year moved to another area. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm asking you, how do you bring it down to the fact that what happened on air had that impact?
You can do that, but in your instance, guys, let's use this as a case study, so it's not a dialogue. So in your instance, you would then have different, what do you call it? Not parameters, but
Like outcomes.
yeah, no. In your case, you would have different channels, not channels. Variables, different variables. So if it's, for instance, crime as a theme, different themes. So crime as a theme, you would have health as a theme, you'd have youth development as a theme, you'd have education as a theme. You find partners with them, you bring those partners on board, you give them the same set of parameters, and you start that relationship and you start assessing that. Okay, so that's the only way, and we had a round table with other stakeholders in different of these operating areas, where we educate them in understanding the role of the radio station and why we want to measure those. Okay, I'm jumping now again. This talks about leadership. Is it loud?
Hopefully.
I can't promise you that I will bring you all home alive. But this I swear, before you and before Almighty God, that when we go into battle, I will be the first to set foot on the field, and I will be the last to step off. And I will leave no one behind. Dead or alive, we will all come home together. So help me God.
Okay, so this is really just, for us to start looking at ourselves as, giving that leadership locally with other organizations as well. I think they're trying, but we have this capacity as a radio station to bring all of them together. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, without even gloating, it's beautiful to be able to bring everybody together. To bring everybody together around the table and to start looking at our communities and the state that our communities are in and the kind of evils that we want to address within that community and the roles that we can get these partners to start playing. So when you start doing program planning, you start thinking around these rather than trying to just think about type of music, but you also start thinking of what kind of themes of these music can address some of these issues. I know it sounds stupid, but I mean, if you have it, if you can see that those lyrics can also start changing people's subconscious thinking and the behavior, it is a good thing. Let me close this thing. It's a good thing. So then the next one would be our compliance areas. Okay, so when we look at compliance, in the South African context, what I've done here is I've taken the regulation and I've put it in a chart or a table. So ICASA, within that regulation, they want to see ownership and control in terms of the structure. They want to see your documentation, your projects, your initiatives. They want to see proof of those. Board member CVs, business plan, including financial projection, community survey, proof of mission and need. So those things is in the regulation. They would ask you those if you submit those renewals. So the idea is that you set up your governance structure, because this would be from a board side of view. Okay, there's one later on that I'll show you from a management side of view, but from the board side, these compliance sections would be areas that the board will look at. How do we put verifiable means in place. So your station status would be, let's say, registered non-profit. The board will make a tick there. We filed the certificate, it's up to date, you know. Community development projects and initiatives, we've received the annual report. These were the partners, these were the areas of the projects that we partnered with or that we initiated, because some stations initiate their own projects within communities. Board member CVs, there's the file, business plan including financial projection for the next 3 years, community survey, proof of mission and need. So that when you reply to ICASA or reapply to ICASA, it's really not about what they're asking. It's about your passion and how you've taken the framework that they've given you in the regulation to create a management tool, a governance tool. Okay, so that's the idea around it. So statutory compliance, they will ask you about the record of staff in terms of labor, pay as you earn, UIF. It's not just ICASA. Department Labor and SARS will ask that of you. So from the board side, that's another area that they can use this table as a template to start checking, you know, where are we on these. You can put a percentage there in terms of completion or in terms of where you are, but start testing your status. Record of your tax clearance certificate, your company registrar compliance issues, your AGM minutes, your director certificates, your audit financial statements. So here is where the board will make those assessments and write down that, because it's important for them to know. Otherwise, when ICASA comes, you can't say, I don't know. Okay, so record of ICASA compliance reports. You know that ICASA does this on an annual basis. Get that from ICASA. Ask them, send us the compliance report, file it. Go through it. If there's areas that they've raised, address those areas. Report that to your management meeting, management to the board, minute that, take resolutions on it if you need to, because that's your paper trail of how you've addressed the concern raised by ICASA. Okay, so record of SAMRO and others, there's so many others, RISA and them, I haven't put them all there, but yeah, make sure that those are critical because they are all being legislated. It's not something that you cannot do, okay? Corporate governance, board members registered with the registrar, is the thing up to date, okay, the certificate. Signed minutes of the board meetings, record of the reports to the board, latest annual report, financials, organizational reports. Make sure that you cover your HR technical projects, programs, because those are the questions that the regulation asks you in terms of when you submit those. They will come back to you. They will say to you, let's take the 50+1 for instance. So 50+1 and 51. They would come back to you and say, no, you are non-compliant because your constitution or your MOI is saying 50+1. And you are supposed to have 51. The regulations say clearly it must be 51% quorum, sorry. So, corporate governance, what are those areas of compliance there? We were at the latest organizational report, including HR, list of operational policies. These are the ones that's listed in the regulation. So let's just make sure that you have them in your policy pack. And then, what is the signed operational plan, financial plan? We might not have a problem with that as we sit in this room, but those are the areas that the regulation identifies that ICASA will assess you on, okay? So the licensed and promise renewal, the record of your annual ICASA report, license renewal, you will find in that renewal they ask you your compliance reports. Then you ask yourself, what is this? But it's actually the one that they've actually done on you, okay? So record of monthly ICASA reports, make sure that you file those. And also what I've picked up is that there are so many of these that we don't do. For instance, your interviews with local artists. They want a log of that. They want a log of your sponsorships. They want a log of your, those are things that we don't necessarily always do, because you submit to them local music content. But in your reporting, you can actually add local artists that you interview, and that also gives you,
The format factor.
the format factor, that's the word I was looking for, sorry, thanks. The format factor, so there it also gives you some weighted areas or points for that. So if you have these, then you can put systems in place, because you can use those logs. Let me just jump quickly. Community participation is the other area for the board to look at, which is the mechanisms and structures of community participation. I spoke about that briefly. Register of different types of members. If you have members, they want to see that members, policy, and they want to see how members can, there's a specific thing that they look at their days for, is how members can renew membership within that policy. They want to see that. Okay, then there's also the list of signed MOUs, NGOs and CBOs, list of content partnerships, and your sorry. Okay.
Sorry, one of the things that they asked for under the renewal of our license was legalities of office bearers.
Yes.
What do they mean by that?
They are actually looking for a, what is that you call?
Content office space.
Yeah, conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest.
So, this is-
Yeah. Okay. So that's the governance one, and then these are the same, key result areas for management, but they are just other, key performance indicators that you would use to guide management, to assist them to manage the station based on these things. And these forms I will make available. I'm gonna send you a link to get it to get it, but I'll send it to, what's her name? Natalie. Yeah. So I actually want to run now faster. So are there areas here that you want to talk about? Because I need to jump to the other topic. It's okay, ne? You will get the forms anyway. So if not, ask Natalie to pester me to make sure that you get them.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very helpful, because you can play them with their own game. They're ticking boxes, and you can tick boxes too.
Yeah. Okay, so that's compliance. So I want to show you this quickly, which is towards the performance side. Now, it's a tool that I use, an ERP tool, that I use, that condensation made available to stations. So here you can see I'm compliance officer for Josie. So I'm logged in as Franklin on Josie FM's website. So you can now see that actually what we are talking about in terms of those weighted areas, when you click compliance, you go back to dashboard. So what this ERP does, it actually tries to work to provide you support with the donkey work in the station, okay? So it's got programs, it's got news, adverts and production, and the one that I want to come to is the ICASA compliance. So under the compliance there are most of those weighted areas there. So the idea is for you to be able to find templates on the software to help you. And for the software, as you enter data into the ERP system, it then upgrades the percentages here of compliance. You want to get to total green on them. Okay, so this is just one of the tools that I suggest stations look at if you want. Okay, I'm gonna go out here now because we done.
So that tool, how did we access it?
Yeah, now this tool, condensation, is, I went to condensation and I asked them to subscribe. So it's a subscription, okay? So you can choose which modules you want to use, but as a compliance officer for Josie, I went to condensation to subscribe to it. I'm showing it to you because it can help you to populate those forms, the ICASA forms, as you input data of your station. So you would find here, for instance, there's employees, and under employees, they would ask you there's employee records, there's a leave manager, there's there's payroll. So it's a cloud-based software, and I do this here with my different department heads so that my compliance becomes easier, and this thing populates those areas. We can talk about this later what do you call it, out of the workshop here, okay?
Yeah.
So okay, so at the write the work plan, the operational plan. Where did I put it? Is it this one? Yeah, sample operational plan. So when you look at then your performance side of the radio station, so the performance side of your station is it's easy, because when you go to your strategic planning sessions, you will develop your strategy, and out of your strategic planning session you will have your objectives that you've identified or goals that you've identified, and say, okay, these are the 4 strategic areas for our organization. So when you do that, you then come and you take those you operationalize those, and that's what the operational plan is trying to do. It's trying to operationalize. Okay, let me just, so the operational planning mechanisms used by the management and board. The operational plan derives its objectives from the strategic plan while developing the strategic plan in partnership, participatory process involving the board and senior management. The method used for operational plans is an annual planning tool that breaks the objectives and focus areas developed in the strategic plan into bite-sized quarterly objectives with key activities, and that obviously breaks down to monthly from a management point of view, and the latter enables the board to measure, and this is actually the more critical part. How does the board measure performance? How do we know that we are actually effective, other than the bottom line, which might be financial? But I always maintain community radio is a social enterprise. So you have financial and social bottom line. The social bottom line is the one that we don't always articulate properly, but it's actually linked to our mission statement, the how. That's how you do things. So it's so critical then for us to, when we look at performance, to be able to locate that back to our strat plan, and then identify those themes and then draw them back into our operational plan. I've used the Gantt chart method here, but you can use your own method, but take those objectives and link them, call them your themes. 4 objectives, mostly you don't have more than 6, but take those objectives and then try to break them down into your operational quarterly goals that you can then use give to the board in your report. So what I mean by this, Mr. Board Member, is that You can, for instance, say, okay, sustainability is a theme. What's the objectives? To increase our revenue through whatever means. This is a sample, so the figures might not be realistic. Objective 2 of the same theme would be to increase sales, advertising to that. Objective 3 of that same theme might be, so now in your strat plan you had one strategic objective, sustainability, but you can break that then down on your operational plan to be able to start honing into how to measure that performance. So there's then the theme of governance. This station had good governance also as a theme. There are the objectives in terms of that. There are the objectives in terms of governance, which is 1, to develop a code of good practice to ensure provincial good standards and governance management by governance and management. This is a provincial structure. They've got several radio stations that's linked to them. So the idea was for them to give a clear standards in terms of what good governance and management is for those stations, and then make that available to them in terms of a booklet or whatever guide to assist them. Okay, so from an operational performance point of view, you want to create those measurable, bite-sized activities and have means in terms of how to measure them. I'm gonna keep quiet now. I'm open. It's 15 minutes before 5. Are we finishing at 5?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm sorry for rushing. This is really, I took too much. I took too much. When I say that, I mean too little time for the 3 areas, because I think sustainability, I'm gonna briefly take 2 minutes to talk about them, that you would find that, yes, I love what you were saying, that your station is doing very good. That's very confident. And it's great to hear that, but then also, I think building blocks towards that sustainability is that it obviously changed from one area to another, because I can try all of what you've done and I might not be successful because of the, just the dynamic within my local area. But there's still lessons to be learned, and I would love to talk to you to talk about your recipe and make a podcast about that, so stations can just listen to what you've done, because that's great. But when we look at sustainability, we know there's financial sustainability, there's social sustainability, and institutional sustainability. And if you just look at financial sustainability, it will become very difficult, because what you are trying to do is to sell the radio station without looking at the worth of the radio station. So yes, you have a product, yes, you have airtime, yeah, you play nice music, but you want to look at those 3 things in balance. So you have your financial sustainability that sits on your social sustainability as a driver. And then you have your institutional sustainability, which is your governance, your management, these mechanisms, plus your stakeholder management, how you engage them, how you are compliant to the regulator. That's the institutional side. So the social sustainability side is obviously things that I try to start with earlier with that document, when I was saying there are different schools of thought, different spectacles that you might use to look at local community and how you want to start dealing with some of the challenges that they're experiencing. So let's talk about social sustainability very quickly. So with social sustainability, you become involved. You become one of your listener becomes you. So you then experience the heartache and the pain. You experience the challenges that they face, and you then look at that from that point of view and start developing a response. Warm, love, sensitive response to that. And so you won't talk down on them, you will rather talk through and with them, but never talk to them. You know, so that's the pillars that you need to put in place to look at social sustainability. It changes obviously in Link FM, né? Community. There might be other areas in, as in Kingfisher's area, but the principle here is that you must be sensitive. You must look at your audience, your community, as your family, as you. You know, so that's the starting point. The sooner you do that, then there's the loyalty factor that will increase and improve. And yes, people might be negative about what you're doing, but later on they will catch on because they will see that you're not doing it for money, you're doing it for love, and money will follow. So it's not easy, but I think it's very heartening to be able to do that and to rather go that route, and yeah. So yeah, I have a few examples here as well, out of my own experience in terms of that, the sustainability side.